Добрий день, я вітаю всіх.
Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is our briefings with the one devoted to our power grid. So let's talk about the aftermath of the enemy's strike, about recovery, and obviously about the expectations. Joining us in the studio is Oleksandr Kharchenko, director of the Energy Industry Research Center. Good morning. So the latest strikes inflicted by the Russians, they tell us that the tendency to shell our power grid is their priority. We see the consequences of such strikes. The last couple of statements that we've heard this week was the one of the Director General of Yasna, who called Ukrainians and businesses to get prepared to the possible power shutdowns during winter period. At the same time, today there was a message by the Ministry of Energy, who have stated that the system works in a balanced mode. There are no planned restrictions for the consumers. So let's talk about the situation for the time being. Let's talk about the latest strikes and their consequences for all of us. So let's start with the fact that frequently the question is posed like that what's going on with the shellings that have resumed, but they never resumed. They were continuous. They were ongoing all the time within the last 2 years. At least once per 2 weeks, there are strikes on the power grid facilities or any installations of critical infrastructure, which result in certain kind of an adaptation. Ukrainian power grid for the time being is pretty well adapted to the strikes like that. We know how to respond. It's clear that a lot of fortifications were built. The coordination was improved with the air defense, and anywhere where there are air defense capabilities, they are installed and they are active. Of course, it's not a perfect situation. Well, could some targeted waves of strikes on the energy infrastructure result in some consequences unpleasant for us? Yes, they can. Let's be honest and let's realize it. At the same time, I'm seeing no grounds to talk about apocalypse, national blackout, like we're all gonna die. No, we're not. We were already through situations like this and even worse. And given what I'm seeing from the perspective of preparation to the heating season and recovery of the generating capacities and what's available in the system, and having evaluated our capacity to resist the build fortifications, because as you read, there were 5 drones hitting installation number X. Well, and you realize that the fortifications fulfilled their task. Of course, there are some facilities that cannot be protected by any fortifications, and in this case, I'm talking about thermal generation. But generally, there is no reason to talk about national scale catastrophe. There is a reason to say that the regional shutdowns are possible as a result of the strikes on certain facilities, and they are going to happen, but the power supply is being resumed within 5 to 6 hours, and on a national scale, those attacks are passing unnoticed. The majority of Ukraine doesn't even find out about it. So where is the biggest threat, in my opinion? The potential attacks on the heat supply facilities, where the cities are located close to the front lines, where the Russians can inflict strikes on the thermal power plants or large boiler rooms. Those strikes may happen. And no heat supply in winter. That's a pretty sad scenario if the winter is cold, and according to some forecasts, that's quite possible. So being left without heat supply is a dangerous scenario. So these last 2 warm months, what local authorities are supposed to do? I mean, of all of those cities that use centralized power supply, is to take care about the backup heat supply schemes just for the case anything happens. So again, it's possible to develop the alternative scenarios. Like here you have something damaged, so we're going to supply heat from here, then we're going to bring some backup equipment from there. So all those scenarios should be discussed, they should be talked through, and in the best case scenarios, conducted as a tabletop exercise. Many cities do it, not all of them, but many do. And another part is preparation of the heat supply utility companies for the heating season. Unfortunately, we must state that there are cities which are the zones of increased risk where the local authorities are honestly not prepared. It's like an exemplary example of it. The city of Kryvyi Rih, where about 450 buildings were left without heat supply last year, and potentially the same situation may be repeated this year, and the efforts should be doubled there to ensure the heat supply for the people, even without any attacks. There are other cities that represent increased risk, like Kharkiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv, Odessa, where the strikes are almost immediate and no one can stop those missile attacks. That's the zone of increased risk, and serious problems with heat supply may arise there. A triple effort should be taken there to ensure the heat supply for them. That's in brief. Well, talking about the regions that were affected by the latest attacks, which are those regions? Well, in fact, Sumy, Kharkiv, Kherson, Mykolaiv region, Zaporizhia region, Kryvyi Rih again, that is being hit again and again. Those are the regions that are the most risky. Well, there are also a lot of risks in Chernihiv and traditionally Kyiv, because Kyiv is the energy deficit city. It depends a lot on its thermal power plants. Should anything happen to them, it will cause serious problems. Kyiv invests a lot in improvement of situation. They do a lot to mitigate those risks, but again, the scale plays against the city because it takes time to plan everything properly. There's a lot of work to be done. But when it comes to other cities, the situation is more calm there. We've seen the latest report. There was a lot written about it, that the Russians were trying to damage Tripilya thermal power plant. And, well, let me be honest, I cannot understand the logic of the journalist waves, because 10 days before the Tripilya thermal power plant, another thermal power plant was seriously damaged, way more seriously. Thanks God, everything is already sorted out, is going to resume its operation, but there was no single question. And when it comes to Tripilya, there's a lot of questions. Everybody is getting agitated. There was another attack that honestly didn't bring any revolutionary results for the Muscovites. Everything is going to be resumed just shortly. It will be back in operation shortly. Unfortunately, the attacks are ongoing. Well, we understand that one way or another, as a result of the strikes, we bring a lot of capabilities to mitigate the consequences. I'm talking about the recovery. To what extent do you understand our capabilities? Do we have sufficient resources, personnel, material resources? Are we okay with that?
Look, ideal world from the point of view of the engineers that are responsible for this or that object, it doesn't exist. So whatever you do, there will be a deficit of equipment, personnel, and even money. That's why ideal world is unachievable from the point of view of what we can support to rely on, and this does not mean that we need to stay at rest and not do anything. There's a lot of work to do. There is a reserve. We have a reserve of equipment, but it will be depleted in the course of the 3-4 months that are to come. And we need to start thinking now where we get the new equipment. Unfortunately, from the point of view of the energetics, there is a so-called pause of support from the world supporters, and there were a lot of finance material provided to Ukraine, and it has slowed down significantly recently. However, there is also a pit, so to speak, that is includes the necessity to order beforehand to order material. There is a lot of nuances here. A lot of work needs to be done. However, at the same time, the situation is not bad at all. And if we compare something, the situation to the one that we had a year ago, we are much better. Okay, so the next question I wanted to ask you, the reserves of gas. In the context of our heating plants, it is quite an actual question. What do you think about the resilience of the heating system in the coming winter? Well, the prognosis is positive, and I need to say that the Naftogaz team tackled quite a challenge here, and the government also put some significant work into it, and there were significant money acquired, and the money has been acquired, and the necessary volumes of gas are being bought or are going to be bought in the nearest days. And in terms of some kind of internal worries, I don't feel it. I don't feel anything like that. Also, we wanted to ask about you about the import and export of gas. Yes, we do have import. We don't have export, of course, and the rate of procurement of gas is normal, plus minus the ratings that were put by the government as a goal. It will be reached, and there may be some insufficiencies. However, we have reserves. Naftogaz has reserves, and if need be, there will be a opportunity to buy more gas a little bit later. We have 14 billion cubic meters for this winter already secured, and this should be enough, basically. Another thing that we discussed with the government representatives is the decentralization of our energy system. How is our tempo in this regard? It was very interesting to read the report of our NGOs. There was a competition about who can reach more goals, and now we have a concrete answer. In 2024, the 152 megawatts were connected to the energy system. So we have objective data. So it's not just mottos or pep talk. It's practical numbers. This decentralization is gaining tempo right now, and is developing in quite a significant manner, and really in reality, we have support from the government, and however, I don't think that the project in general terms will end anytime soon. It will be ongoing for a few more years. For the money that we received from our donors in 2023, they will be put into work near the end of this year. So who is the leader among our regions in decentralization? It's Kyiv. Kyiv is doing for decentralization more than any other country. Kharkiv and Odessa are also among the leaders. I need to say that those cities are naturally in developing decentralization better. So we have any questions on the floor?
Nikita Halka, Suspilne Mowlenia. Good morning. I would like to ask you about the situation with the security of our power grid facilities. Specifically, I'm talking about those which were supposed to be protected with 3 levels. There is no public information about such protection. According to what you know, to what extent are those facilities protected? Do we have power grid facilities in Ukraine that would be protected with those 3 layers of protection? Well, I will be honest with you, I've never heard about any facilities protected with 3 layers. For what I know, that project was closed briefly after its opening as the one that doesn't make any sense, because something that was imagined previously as a 3-layer protection, you know that protection would result in cost 3 times bigger than the cost of equipment it would be supposed to protect. But when it comes to the 2nd level protection, well, I was already given the example today, like last week report, 4 or 5 drones hit one facility, no damage. Any more questions on the floor? Also, I would like to ask you about the condition and probably the protection of our gas storage facilities. There were reports, I think, back in 2024, 2025, that Russians were undertaking attempts to inflict strikes on those facilities, and to what extent this infrastructure is damaged as a result of the Russians' attack within the last year. Okay, let's keep it clear. What is the gas storage? Those are not the tanks standing in the field. Those are the former gas mines located in the depth of 1, 2, or 3 kilometers deep, and they were fully exhausted, then pressurized, and now there are compressors that pump the gas down there and then pump it back. So damaging the underground storage, I don't know to what extent the humanity is capable of doing it. Well, when it comes to auxiliary equipment, it's being attacked both in the storages and in the mining facilities. The so-called gas refinery stations and compressor stations are being attacked, those which are responsible for transferring gas from our mining infrastructure to our consumers. That's a great sorrow. We've lost at least 500 million of Ukrainian mined gas due to those attacks, because the equipment had to be recovered, repaired. Frequently, it's not even available in the market. We have to wait a lot, so we have losses in our national mining. But whether the damage was critical, well, I cannot put it like that. We're going to survive it. But when it comes to protection, the new management of Naftogaz are taking care of it, but they're physically having no time for that. Building the 2nd level protection is a project that takes at least more than 1 year. No matter how hard you try, it will take you more than 1 year. So I'm not ready to talk about the results. There's a lot of work that I know about, but probably it's too early. Well, It's a pity that the previous management of Naftogaz was not taking care of it. Well, did we manage to recover our mining? Well, the majority of it is recovered. The rest is being taken care of. But again, as I've mentioned, we need to wait for some equipment before it's installed. Thank you very much, dear friends. Do we have any more questions on the floor? Well, now that we do not, I would like to thank you for all that information, for this briefing. Thank you for having me. And I would obviously like to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we have an opportunity to gather here. And see you shortly. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.